Hello people, it's me, Warwick Western Right, your altruistic sanctimonious git of a communist friend here. Title of the video today is going to be called The World According to Warwick. So, as you can imagine from the title, it's going to be a bit on the cynical side, so excuse the cynicism of this video, but you might find it quite enlightening. I'm going to start out by just summarising the way I see the world, go into some examples of why I think the world is like that, and close up with a little summary of how I think we can cure the problem. And the cure of the problem bit is going to be a bit like an extension of the video I made about Zen and the art of giving up without giving up. So, sort of my opinion of things, the way I think the world is. I think the world is basically full of people which are pigeonholed based on identity, and identity kind of blinds people. Depending on what a person identifies with, normally dictates what you can get them to believe or not. So basically, the way the keyholes of society control society is by identity. So basically, you might have 1,000 different identities, for example, and each identity will have some kind of group leader. And the corrupt keyholes of society only need to control the leaders of each identity or pigeonhole, and subsequently they control all of society. That's kind of my opinion on things. So, as far as the way identity is a powerful control tool. As you know, I'm always repeating that philosophy about beliefs and nature going hand in hand, and I also have that philosophy that let go of everything that you are in order to be all you can be. For without identity, there can be no prejudice or war. So those two philosophies are quite significant because obviously the first philosophy is about beliefs and nature, the other one is about identity. But I believe that identity and beliefs are two sides of the same coin, because if a person believes in, say, Christianity, then their identity is a Christian. So they kind of go hand in hand, beliefs and identity. And of course, identity extends to a bit more than that. Obviously, it's what you identify with or the cliques you hang out with. These are all kind of part of your identity. Then I'm going to explain about how identity. I believe that and uh, identity and beliefs combined are by far the most powerful and effective control tool. There's no more powerful control tool than those two things. And I also believe, according to Warwick, is that people that lack identity represent. If you think of the controlling mechanism of society, think of that like some big computer program. People without identity, they represent a bug in that program, and people that lack identity are by far the biggest threats to control. There's no bigger threat than someone that refuses to take on identity and has correct beliefs, or beliefs which kind of not really beneficial to the keyholes of society. I'm going to give you some examples of how beliefs can affect how identity can affect what people believe. For example, let's say, for example, I've given an example before. If you go up to someone, I don't know, if you ask, say, I don't know, a Christian Pole about, say, World War I, they'll say, Russia invaded Poland. If you ask, say, I don't know, a Russian speaker from Russia, they'll say, well, the Americans invaded the Polish region of Russia, for example. So depending on your identity is what you believe. Or, if you say to a North Korean, oh yeah, that Kim Jong Un or whatever his name is starves his people. If you say that to an American, they'll probably believe you. If you say it to a North Korean, they'll say, well, isn't it the sanctions which are starving our people from the United States? So, identity, what you can make people believe, or another really more extreme versions of how identity can insanely blind people, and how you can actually get people to believe the biggest load of jizz-filled balls from identity. Say, for example, you might get some people, like, say in the Muslim religion, for example, there's a couple of people like suicide bombers. Once a suicide bomber has this kind of weird belief that if they kill, some infidels and kill themselves in the process, that they'll take a certain amount of members of their family to heaven with them as a reward. You've got to be now. You might think I'm having a go at the Muslim religion for this, but to make it a bit more equal, I have a go at the Christian religion afterwards. Yeah. So, but now, for example, I'm not having a go at the Muslim religion. I've got lots of Muslim friends, but basically, when a person identifies themselves with something like a Muslim, you can actually get them to believe crap like that. Sometimes, that's the power of identity. Or, for example, say in the Christian religion, I remember I used to be into Christianity when I was young and naive, and they taught me about the rapture. Now, the rapture is a belief that one day of reckoning or second coming or whatever it is in the world, the end, literally all good people in the world will literally disappear into thin air and only the bad people will be left. Now, of course, some people actually believe that. So this is an example of how powerful identity is, what kind of crap you can get people to believe if they identify with something. This is like an example of the power of identity to really blind people. And so there's lots of examples. I'll go and look at my little notes here. And I'll give you some other examples of the power of like beliefs and identity. For example, I remember once I was getting some free food outside this place on Monday evening, and I was talking to a drugs counsellor, and he told me that one of his patients that he used to see as a drug counsellor actually killed himself, committed suicide, and we had a little chat about it, and he said, well, and he said to me, no, addiction is it's like we had a little argument saying, well, I used to say to him, always promote this belief as that person's beliefs and nature go hand in hand. And he said, and he was promoting the belief that basically he said, look, drug addiction is a disease that can never be cured. And later on in the argument, I said to him, this person that killed himself, did you by any chance teach him that he has a disease that can never be cured? It went straight over his head. He didn't really know what I was really saying. But the point is, if you can trick someone into taking the wrong beliefs in some contexts, you can get them to kill themselves. If you tell a drug addict that he can never ever be cured, and you tell him as an authoritative figure, like someone that's qualified in psychology or a drugs counsellor, that's kind of an authoritative figure. So, people tend to believe something if it comes from an authoritative source, especially if they believe it's an independent source as well. So this is another example of how beliefs can really mess people up. And, there's other things as well. I mean, like, the Roman Catholic Church, for example, as there's been a big problem in the Roman Catholic Church with like sexual misconduct, for example. And sometimes I say to myself, well, you teach children when they reach puberty that masturbation is wrong, lust is wrong, sex outside marriage is wrong, and if they happen to be gay, that's wrong. And I think to myself, don't you think maybe that's why there's a problem with sexual misconduct in the Roman Catholic Church? But, they're so into their beliefs strongly that, identity blinds people. They're so blinded by their identity they can't see that they messed up these people's heads when they're children. But yes, but kind of sad. But this is an example of how beliefs can really mess people up. But the thing is also, the type of beliefs they promote in society kind of can promote control. It's like, for example, I'm always talking about the beliefs and nature philosophy. A person's beliefs and nature go hand in hand, as do a person's nature and their will. But most importantly, the beliefs, nature, and will of the collective generate the very reality in which we all live. Only correct beliefs can set us free. As you know, I'm always promoting that belief quite a lot. Of course, in psychology, which is an authoritative source, they talk about the nature-nurture debate, which goes against my beliefs, my beliefs that nature kind of belief. But the point of the matter is, psychology is one of the mechanisms which they use to trick all of society into taking on wrong beliefs. Because, because this nature-nurture debate is in the nature of society, because there's two types of people in the world. There's people that never change and people that blame mummy for the way that they are, hence nature-nurture. But if I can convince and rally enough people to my cause and get them to take on my beliefs about nature and nurture, well, then there'll only be one type of person in this world, a type of person that decides what type of person they want to be and take on the correct beliefs to achieve what type of person they want to be, And so what I try to convince people of is to have correct beliefs. Though I'm not religious, I do believe in God, and I do believe in the concept of good and evil. And I believe, for me, I encapsulate the human definition of good and evil is encapsulated to me as social and antisocial behaviour. So I encourage people to take on beliefs that are compatible with social behaviour and make sure the system of beliefs are consistent within each other. So no one belief contradicts another belief. Because and another thing also with incorrect beliefs is that they tend to spread like a disease. They corrupt key holders of society. They use authoritative, like psychological sources, psychology of science, and teach things authoritatively. Like, for example, they teach that the mind doesn't understand negatives, and they teach things they do. They teach to be proud of your identity. If you're American, be proud of that, gay pride, all that kind of stuff. And all these things where another thing that the world according to Warwick is, I believe that a lot of people, like, they're out kind of fighting for justice and fighting for this right and that rights and the other rights, and sometimes I believe the keyhole society are kind of hooked into mankind's rebellious nature and got them to fight to actually make this change stronger when they think they're fighting to make their change weaker. Because when people fight for these rights, and people, LGBT fighting for the rights and the Me Too movement and all that kind of stuff, I believe that the world is actually fighting to enforce their own identity and to pigeonhole themselves even more, so to make it even easier for the key holders of society to actually control them. And what I teach is that I try to teach people, let go of your identity, let go of it completely, everything. Where your identity is American, your identity is Labour, Conservative, was it Liberal, Democrat, was it all those political groups, or your identity, it was a gay or a straight. Even let go of your identity as a man and a woman. Even let go of those things, because identity really really does blind people. And the trick to it is I want to encourage people to have. I want to encourage people to get into a movement of lack of identity. I want to promote this idea in the world, because it's another thing with identity is it blinds people. They can't see things for what they really are. And as I said in one of my previous videos, if you have correct beliefs and those beliefs are completely consistent within themselves, that your system of beliefs don't contradict each other, as it were, and that combined with lack of identity will sharpen your discernment. Your judge of character will go through the roof. It will be very, very, very extreme. Your judge of character will be very, very clear. And I've experienced this from a spiritual point of view in my own life, and I'm here sharing this kind of information with you. And what I'm telling you is, rather than fighting for, what I'm trying to say is, instead of say fighting for women's rights, I'm advising men and women to let go of their very identity as a man and a woman, take on beliefs which are consistent with social behaviour, which so that you'll end up with a good nature. And then a man won't treat a woman badly. If it's in a person's nature to treat people well because they have correct beliefs, they'll treat that person well, regardless of whether that person is a woman or a man. You don't need to identify them as a woman. You just need to treat people. You treat people each other. And also, this is the biggest thing that I'm trying to explain here with the Keyholder Society, is that we all kind of fighting for justice in life, but I don't think we realise that we're fighting for the wrong things, and we're not realising you don't have to truly have a better world. You actually don't need to fight at all. There's actually nothing to fight for, and this is like an extension of my Zen and the Art of Giving Up Without Giving Up video. And what I'm kind of saying here, people, is that with when you have extreme discernment, you'll start to see the corrupt people for what they really are. Once you see the corrupt people for what they really are, they lose their power. Their power completely diminishes. As a person who's dedicated myself, talk about myself here, as a person that's dedicated myself to getting rid of whatever little identity I have left and truly embracing the beliefs and nature belief. I meditate every day on my beliefs, and obviously when you take on correct beliefs, we all have to fight our demons. It'd be great if we could become absolutely enlightened overnight, but it's a long path. So every now and then I fall short of my beliefs, and when I do, I'm gifted with self-realization. I know it's happened. I meditate, and I just say, right, I've got to strengthen my beliefs. My faith needs to be stronger in this belief, or I'll look for a belief which contradicts one of my beliefs, which is perhaps maybe why I fell short of my own standards as far as practicing my beliefs is concerned. But if you really, really contemplate every belief you have and contemplate its effect on your character, and every time you spread a belief, think about the effect it has on society. And so the thing is, I've become so, faceless or identityless to a degree, to the point where the keyholder society have kind of lost a lot of their power over me. But the thing is, the keyholders of society, their real power is really, I've got something in my notes. Let me quickly refer to my notes. I've got a couple of words here in my notes: manipulation, provocation, suggestion, persuasion, and rally. Basically, these words are kind of encapsulate the real control of the key holders of the society. Their true power, over us, is their ability to trick us into taking incorrect beliefs, combined with taking on identity, and leveraging that to manipulate us into treating each other badly. The only power corrupt people have is to manipulate us to treat each other badly. That's all the power they have. See, we're going through all this life fighting for rights, and going out in these rallies or demonstrations, and chaining ourselves to a car and that kind of stuff, thinking that we're making the world a better place. But the truth is, we don't need to fight for any of that stuff. The demon is within. Gandhi once said that what you see on the outside is a reflection of what's happening on the inside. And you see all these corrupt people that you get in government. When I've always said that when it comes to placing blame, you never need to look any further than those who are in control. The government's in control, therefore it's their fault. But the corruption in the government is what's outside, and it's a reflection of what's inside, you see. So our incorrect beliefs is what's given the keyhole society their power. When we go out on these rallies, we think we are fighting for justice. We're actually increasing their power, we're increasing their strength. And that's what you're not realizing. Because, obviously, though the keyhole society have lost a lot of power over me, a lot of control over me, because I've chosen the way of non-identity and chosen the way of embracing the relationship between beliefs and nature, the keyhole society still have some power over me, but their power over me is indirect, because they can still manipulate other people. They can't manipulate me anymore into treating other people badly, but they can manipulate other people around me into treating me badly. So they still have some control over me. And the thing is, my rallying call in this video is to try and get as many people as possible to follow this movement that I'm trying to start, and that is a movement towards lack of identity and the true, full spiritual understanding of the relationship between beliefs and nature, and kind of come down the path with me, basically, is what I'm asking you to do, because we're fighting out there on the streets for justice. The demons are within. We need to let go of our identity and acknowledge beliefs. I'm going to give you a couple of other examples of beliefs which are questionable, things that they've tricked us into doing, beliefs which are actually wrong. Say, for example, I've already talked about the nature-nurture debate and my beliefs that a person's beliefs and nature go hand in hand. So that straight away, that's a belief that they've tricked us into taking. They've taught us to be proud of our identity. Believe it or not, we actually need identity like a hole in the head. From a certain psychological point of view, identity is a hole in the head, but that's if you understand a bit about Psych 101. Or, I don't know, let's say another one, which I talk about a lot, guilty by association, which from a certain point of view is also suggesting innocent by association as well. So I suggest the belief that you believe that a philosophy that truth is truth, no matter whose mouth it comes from, rather than guilty by association, because when a person like me spreads an ideology that I will do, the keyhole to society will probably try to slander me in an attempt to get people to not follow me, if that makes sense. So they'll use the guilty by association philosophy. So I'm saying, no matter what you think of me, if you think I'm a bad person or a good person, try and understand that what I'm telling you is true and sound information. There's another one which I've mentioned in my previous videos. Their mind doesn't understand negatives. Now, believe it or not, a very, very big part of manipulation is actually to do with negatives. If a person's a bit on the prejudice side, and you say, you know what, I think black people can have a bit of a selfish nature sometime. Now, believe it or not, you might think this is racist, but that's actually true. But it's half the truth, you see, because all people can have a selfish nature. So if all people can have a selfish nature, by saying black people can have a selfish nature, it's not actually a lie, it's just a half truth, you see. So using identity, like black in this case, with a half truth, combined with tricking people into believing that the mind doesn't understand negatives, can also help spread kind of racism and prejudice, if that makes sense. So, and even when people spread bad rumors about someone, if they want to spread a rumor that someone, I don't know, is, say someone's been accused of being a rapist, for example, and someone wants to say, well, actually, it's not true, and they say, well, actually, how do you know it's not true? Well, I heard, say they might say, oh, he raped his wife or something like that, and they say, well, actually, I actually know for a fact they go to the swingers club. So if he goes to a swingers club, he doesn't match the profile that someone would rape anyone. Not that he's into swinging, He might be like, how dare you have nothing with my wife and not let me watch, kind of thing. But it's not, because it doesn't fit the profile. So sometimes they'll use psychology and profiles to make out a person's innocent, or use another profile to make out they're guilty or something like that. So it's all about that. So there's lots of beliefs here. I'm going to give some other beliefs. Like, for example, here's one: absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's not a very that belief isn't very good for society, because if you believe that, it means if a good person comes into power and they believe that, they'll become corrupt because they believed it. So if that makes sense, there's no real reason why it was. Or I don't know. There's another one: learn from the mistakes of history. I have a belief that the winners of the war write the history books, and they actually write history to trick us into repeating the same mistake rather than not making the same mistake. Not all the time, but sometimes. There are some types of history which are common sense that you can rely on, but that's another thing. Or there's one: money is the root of all evil. I would say that incorrect beliefs are the root of all evil. I think money is an extremely useful catalyst of evil, but it's not really the cause. So little things like that, because if you actually, a person actually believed that, gave them enough money, if they believe that, they might become an evil person because they believed it. There's another one: cheats never prosper. Unfortunately, they do. It's simply not a correct true. I mean, it's true from a certain point of view. If you want to be the best you can be from a personal level, then yeah, you won't prosper. But there's it's another one: two wrongs don't make a right. I actually believe that's a correct philosophy, but very often it's used thrown out of context, if that makes sense. So like, to make out that the right action is really a wrong action, if that makes sense. So correct belief, but it's used in the wrong way. No smoke without fire. Kind of true from a literal point of view, but again, used in a bad context sometimes. Is one: perception is reality. And that's open to interpretation of how you want to interpret it, but normally things that are open to interpretation are open to abuse. I would say that reality is what we make it for our beliefs, probably a bit more of a healthy belief. But or it's things that not simply things that we normalise, for example, what we believe are right, but are quite clearly wrong. Full contact sports. People think it's normal to sit down and watch the big fight on telly between so and so and so and so. But in actual fact, we're getting entertainment by watching two human beings harm each other. But we make it so normal in society that it affects our beliefs and we think it's okay. Things like that. People like to train to win, for example, and people teach us to be competitive. I personally believe that being better than other people or training to win is being better than other people and measuring yourself by other people. I don't think it's a good thing. And also that can hook into a person's ego and their need to kind of value themselves based on how other people value them. Whereas I believe, a true master is someone who's become the best they can possibly be and brought out their own personal potential, regardless if that potential is better than someone else or not. I think that's another one. I don't know. There's one. People believe in unconditional love. I don't think that's a good idea. If you love people unconditionally and they're a bad person and you don't ever punish them, you forgive them all the time, I'm not so sure about unconditional love. Personally, I love people under the condition that they remain a good person in the heart or that have some good in them. If a person is completely twisted and evil, I tend to cut them off with my love. So my love isn't conditional, and I'm kind of think that's right. As another one: ignorance is bliss. I believe that ignorance is bliss, but if you live by that philosophy, it won't be blissful for long, because that blissfulness and ignorance, enhances corrupt keyhole society to progressively take more and more control. Little things like forgive and forget. I'm more of a fan of tolerance than forgiving and forgetting, but again, it's a matter of opinions. There's these little things, little beliefs which we've all been fed, which are kind of questionable. Of course, you can debate those things, but that's a subject perhaps for another video. But the important thing that I'm really trying to say here is that we don't need to fight for anything. There is no fight. The fight is within. That's all you've got to do. And also, if anyone is listening to me, and if anyone is going to take my advice and take this path on spiritually in their life, and if you're listening to me and you're nodding, oh yeah, I totally agree, about identity blinds people, great, I'm pleased. But if you're sitting there nodding here saying, oh yeah, I totally agree with Warwick, other people's identity really are blind, well then you haven't really understood what I've said. You've got to take it on a personal level. You've really got to let go of all your identity, literally everything that you are, on a spiritual level. As a little something I've also noticed about giving up identities, before I was on the path of becoming like faceless or identityless, I used to fight a lot and struggle to know myself, and I found it very, very difficult. It's a very, very long, arduous path. But when I focused on getting rid of my identity, I realized as a result the rate at which I started to know myself accelerated a lot. So it's advising you, if you want to know yourself, it's a much quicker route to get to let go of yourself. So I suppose it's one of those little paradoxes that to know yourself you have to let go of yourself, and letting go of yourself you get to know yourself, and to know yourself is to know God. Another belief to take on as well is as far as being taking on beliefs that are social, beliefs that be social to other people. Try to have a real kind of, what's the word, reverence for social behaviour, almost like to a tree hugging level. To really see yourself as like a symbiont organism that lives in mutual benefit and a mutual symbiont relationship with other people, on a very, very kind of deep level. And that will kind of cause to develop a lot of empathy for people as well, and you'll probably end up being a bit of a tree hugger like me, loving all things and that kind of stuff. And I'm going to also close up with a couple of sayings about the nature of evil. And these philosophies mean exactly the same thing, but they're worded in different ways. So right and wrong to the enemy is defined by what they can and cannot get away with. And there's something that says kind of the same thing. The boundaries of the enemy is defined by the boundaries of the persons or parties that they're dealing with. Because evil people don't actually have boundaries of their own. And this is the most important philosophy. Any mischief possible, they're guilty of. A lot of people underestimate the power of evil. They underestimate what they get up to. If you follow this philosophy, it helps you. If this philosophy becomes a part of your nature, then you're less likely to underestimate the enemy. So remember, any mischief possible, they're guilty of. Doesn't matter how far-fetched it is. Doesn't matter how tinfoil hat it is. How conspiracy nut it is. If it's possible, they're guilty of it. If it's possible, they will get up to it, and that's just kind of guaranteed, basically. Another little warning I would like to give people about following my ideology here is that the pioneers of a new world will always have hardship, and people with correct beliefs and lack of identity do represent the greatest threat to control. So, like a criminal ring, like I said in my previous video, they will come to you. Corrupt keyhole society will come to you, and they will target you, and they will focus intensely on you, because what you are spreading is by far the biggest threat to control. There is no bigger threat to control than lack of identity. We represent a huge bug in their program of control, and we do represent an extreme bug. So remember that you will be made to suffer a bit, you will be slandered, but in the end, if you can spread the ideology enough, it will make the world a better place. And remember what Gandhi said: the enemy is within. We don't need to fight the politicians. You just need to take on correct beliefs. Their only power over us, it's the only power they've got, is their power to manipulate us into treating each other badly. When a person joins the army, the people are tricked into believing the Taliban are evil people. And then when the Taliban join the Taliban, they're tricked into believing that the Americans are evil people. And then they manipulate them to kill each other. Remember, that's how they do it. That's their only power. That's the only power they have. They have no other power whatsoever. They're completely powerless outside their ability to manipulate each other. So this is kind of what I'm saying. Another last warning I would like to tell you is that the enemy does like to use the guilty by association philosophy. And if you do start this identityless movement, don't make the mistake that the skinheads made. Skinhead here. And that is, there's a saying in the Quran. I'm not religious, but there's one of my favourite sayings in the Quran is, don't associate anything with God. And what happened is the skinheads in the 70s, a lot of people think they're a racist group, but they actually were the extreme opposite. The shaving of their head in the 70s was to symbolise lack of identity. By shaving their head, they associated something with God. So what the Keyhole Society did, they filmed people on the news with shaved heads committing terrible acts, and they had a media blackout. I mean, remember the mind negatives? They had a media blackout on what the skinhead movement actually stood for, and they would not stop putting this on the news until people made a bad association between the the faceless or identityless movement and skinheads, and eventually the movement died because of that. So if you follow my movement, I can tell you now what will happen. A mischievous person a representative from the corrupt keyhole society will come to you with the power of rally and rally the cause of what you think you're fighting for, lack of identity. And he will do something to trick you into associate something with the movement. They'll say, shave your head if you believe in identityless, or wear a ring, or have a clever motto that you shout out when you go out in the streets. If you shave your head or wear that ring or get the tattoo or have a motto, you're associating something with God, and you're giving the corrupt keyhole of society an anchor to associate you with something bad or use the guilty by association. So, for example, if you decide to have a tattoo on the left side of your neck to associate with the identityless movement, then basically the media will go out filming people with a tattoo on the neck committing atrocities. It's the same thing with the Muslims. The Muslims get a bad name because, if I wanted to give a Muslim a bad name, all I need to do is, give a little special hairstyle, Abraham Lincoln style beard, certain clothes, say I'm Hassan, go out do something stupid, and all the Muslims get a bad name. That's because the Muslims made the mistake of associating things with God. Yeah, like the beard and the hat, the clerical attire, and give themselves Muslim names. They associated something with God when they did that. So that's why it's easy. People will say, oh, well, they're not real Muslims, which is true. They're not real Muslims, but that's not how psychology works, you see. So don't associate anything with God. That's a very, very good philosophy that I'm going to close with. So I want to close the video now and say thank you very much for listening. And just I want to close by saying these very, very powerful words, and that is their only power over us. The only power they have is to manipulate us into treating each other badly, okay? And tricking us into taking on incorrect beliefs, which enhances their control, and tricking us into taking on identity, which blinds us. It blinds us more than you can possibly imagine. And if you take on my belief, I promise you, you will have the same gift that I have, discernment. Soon as you see them for what they are, their power disappears. It completely disappears. So in that, I'm going to close now. Say thank you very much for listening. Goodbye and God bless.